In the last module, we discussed how feedback is received or not received within the context of the relationship between teacher and student. But at the same time, teacher feedback helps determine the contours of that relationship. Thus, it's really a cyclical process, with feedback both informing and being interpreted within this context of the student-teacher relationship. In this unit, we're going to look at the various factors that influence that relationship and how faculty can cultivate a learning relationship with their students. Let's start by examining the role of emotion in learning. We often think of learning as a purely intellectual enterprise. We read, see, or hear something, evaluate it, and add it to our knowledge base. But it turns out that emotion has a considerable influence on how information is received and processed. In particular, researchers have been looking at the role of achievement emotions in respect to learning. Achievement emotions are just emotions that accompany any task that requires success. These emotions include enjoyment, anxiety, boredom, and frustration. Of course, it should come as no surprise that positive emotions like enjoyment increase learning, while negative emotions like boredom decrease learning. What's more interesting is how the student and teacher can influence these emotions. We tend to think that enjoyment and boredom are solely a product of the activity itself. Some activities are just naturally boring. But it turns out that achievement emotions are also strongly influenced by the learner's evaluation of the utility of the task at hand. If the task seems to lack value, boredom will soon creep in, as will the opposite if the task appears to have value. In other words, a teacher can help regulate a student's achievement emotions by regulating how they view the importance of the task. This is why we encourage faculty members to provide feed up with their comments. Information about why a task is valuable changes the student's disposition towards it, which has been shown to directly affect their performance. Simply telling the student that the reason why they're creating a bibliography is because it's a skill that they're going to need when they write their dissertation can change the student's outlook on the task itself and thus improve their performance. It's also been shown that achievement emotions are influenced by a student's appraisal of their own abilities. Students who take a dim view of their ability to perform a task will generate negative achievement emotions like hopelessness, while students that are confident in their abilities will generate positive achievement emotions that will help sustain them in their effort. As a result, your ability to regulate your own emotional state, as well as your appraisal of a situation, is very important to sustaining your commitment, and especially in a degree program that requires years of effort. Think about the ups and downs that you felt during your graduate career. It's likely that there were moments of frustration, even anger. You most likely saw many fellow graduate students drop out of the program. And often this was not due to a lack of ability, but simply an inability to sustain their motivation. Students who achieve success in long-term programs tend to be able to monitor their own lack of motivation and confidence. They're able to identify when they're sinking emotionally and thus causing the work to suffer. They're also able to develop strategies to get themselves through these down periods. Achievement emotions are also found to have a direct influence on the student's type of thinking. One study found that positive achievement emotions facilitate the use of flexible thinking strategies, whereas negative emotions tend to produce more rigid thinking strategies. This is important because flexibility in thinking produces deeper cognition. And this is very important when the topic becomes more complex, such as graduate work. So negative achievement emotions will tend to put an intellectual cramp on a student's thinking. It's easy to let problems with your work cause you to lose perspective and get yourself down. This can create a vicious downward cycle. Going back to a coaching metaphor, a good coach is sensitive to his or her athlete's mental state and reacts accordingly. A coach knows when an athlete needs to be picked up or at least given a new perspective. This means that a faculty member can influence the student's performance by influencing their self-image. But we have to be careful here. Vacuous praise can diminish a student's performance by making them blind to their problems. One of the biggest mistakes a faculty member can make is to provide nothing but cheerleading in their feedback. Students need an honest appraisal of the work and will soon pick up on this cheerleading as basically meaningless. What we're really talking about here is showing students a path to improving their performance. Learned helplessness is a tendency to give up when one believes that nothing they do can alter the circumstance. A student can fall into this trap, and a faculty member who just points out student problems and feedback can help induce this belief. The way out is for a faculty member to include not just feedback on the student's problems, but also on how to fix them, what we tend to call feed forward. Seeing a path to improvement will have a direct effect on a student's emotional state, and thus their performance. So what does this mean for the teacher? Well, first, it's important to understand emotion's role in learning. A student's poor performance may not just be due to a rational failing of understanding the material, but may at least be influenced by emotions, motivations, or even feelings of self-efficacy. Second, it's important to keep an eye on how a student is reacting to your feedback as evidence of their mental state. It can be hard to see the mental state of a student when you only have the student's work to go on. This is why it might take a direct conversation with the student who is having trouble in order to identify where the problem is and whether it's a crisis of confidence. Here again, a good relationship with a student will make them more open to sharing their confidence issues with you. At the same time, merely reaching out to a student will help build the relationship and demonstrate your willingness to help. Finally, once you get the student on Skype or the phone, ask them about their level of motivation or confidence. If you sense a problem, it can help to relate your own experience with similar emotions when you were a graduate student. Merely seeing that these ups and downs are a normal part of a graduate career and that they can be overcome will go a long ways towards helping the student get through them.